Can you hear me now? Oh, I think we're now live.
I still can't hear you.
You still can't hear me? Okay. So let me see.
Check to see if your microphone is on.
All right. So my microphone. Yes, my mic is. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Oh, he's still not hearing me.
I'm not hearing you.
Okay. So let me see my. Okay, my volume is up. Mic, right? Let me see if unmute. Let me see. Andy, can you hear me now? Oh, you're still not hearing me? Okay, so let's see.
Oh, I'm now hearing you.
Oh, you're now hearing me. Okay, great. All right, I guess okay, so I'm not a technology person, so don't let me say what I was going to say. um, so Randy, I am now learning how to do YouTube, how to do because I've worked for a number of years in television. So I've been a television broadcaster for a number of years, but this YouTube thing is new to me. So I'm learning that, and tonight it gets more complicated than YouTube and StreamYard thing.
Yeah.
So thank you for your assistance, and I have some other folks in the background who are also providing me with some technical support. So I appreciate that. But Randy, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And but it's usually development at work is a part of, we're building out a movement that is called the Building Our Dream Guyana movement. And Building Our Dream Guyana movement is, the aim is to support communities and families, individuals, to build their dream Guyana.
Yes.
And so how can we help you to build your dream community, to build your dream family, to build your dream life? And in doing that, we're able to build our dream Guyana. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight on this program is, I think politics has somehow consumed our every aspect of our lives. And so I think in Guyana, and I don't think people understand how serious it is, where if you're not on the right side at a particular time, there is a frustrating degree of exclusion.
Yes.
And I don't know if you feel the frustration, but certainly I feel the frustration. And I hear the frustration. And we're going to talk about that frustration. So Building Our Dream Guyana is, if you're not on the right side and you're going through this frustration, and that frustration can last for 28 years, 30 years, 23 years. So people are wondering, how can I fulfill my dreams, or how can I realize my dreams? If one, I'm not on the right side, but what we're also doing is to develop a movement where, irrespective of which side you're on, irrespective of if you're a PPP person, a supporter, if you're a APNU and AFC supporter, you're a PNC supporter, you're a Forward Guyana movement supporter, you don't support any political party, you can be a part of the Building Our Dream Guyana movement, because irrespective of whether you're politically aligned, you have dreams. People have dreams. So how can we help you? So what we're also hoping is that building our dream Guyana can also be sort of a technical support, providing technical expertise, a technical advisory group, so to speak. And so, because what I have found is that at the community level, particularly at the village level, there is need for political leadership, but there's also a huge need, a huge gap as it relates to technical leadership.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
You're right.
so, and so what I'm hoping, and what I also find is that government and opposition, there are gaps in terms of technical expertise. So building our Dream Guyana movement, we're hoping that we can provide that technical expertise to, whether it be to the government, whether it be to the opposition parties, whether it be to communities, to families. And so that's the focus. Another focus of the Building Our Dream Guyana movement is shared prosperity.
Hmm.
And the development at work program is also heavily based on shared prosperity. For example, instead of us having 1 billionaire, can we have 10 millionaires? So we're able to spread the wealth around, and so as to ensure that we do not leave anyone behind. So I'll now, pass the mic to you, Randy, to
No, I,
share your views on the whole idea and the concept of building our dream Guyana movement and building our dream communities, building our dream families, building our dream lives. And also, I'd like you to tell us a little about what you do.
oh, so you're stuck there. Okay.
Yes,
I think my internet is a bit shaky, so
that's
I, I,
fine.
I missed something at the end there. But yes, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure being here, and this is a discussion that I think we as Guyanese ought to have. Um, Before I get into that, you asked me to say something about what I do. Most persons know me as a um, one of those faces and voices out there. Now with Ford Guyana and Ford Guyana movement. But I've been involved in community work for the entirety of my adult life as a teacher, as someone who is actively involved in community in sports and culture. And so I'm no stranger to this idea of what it is to, and the question I'll come to, because I think we have to start with the question of what is the Guyanese dream. You know, what is the Guyanese dream? You hear people talk, oh, you're living the American dream, you're living this. But what is the Guyanese dream? What is it that we Guyanese aspire to? And how do you know when you are living that Guyanese dream? And I believe that is wrapped up in exactly what you're talking about, this sense of community, this sense of comfort, this sense of safety. Sometimes I walk into some communities and I believe it looks as if these people in here are living the Guyanese dream. you know, that to borrow a phrase, that good life that a particular president spoke about. Sometimes that you walk into some communities and, you know, it seems safe, it seemed clean, it seemed comfortable. The people, the how, everything seems well laid out. And you ask yourself, is this the Guyanese dream? And what exactly is that made of? What is that? What does that comprise of? And I do honestly believe that if you're living in a community that is safe, that is clean, and you have a job that can sustain you, and you have a comfortable roof over your head, and you have money to save, you're on your way to living that Guyanese dream. Like that, like most persons would aspire to that. At some level, we know these are the things that we need. Like you can say, yes, we're living a comfortable life, or we're living a good life. And the sad reality is, and I want to say this, without getting too political, I do believe that that aspiration, that Guyanese dream, is something that should cut across political lines. And when I say this, I mean that we should have a national plan. We should have a national plan that is geared at seeing everybody step into that place where they're living the Guyanese dream. And it should not be thrown out when the government changes. It should be a national development plan geared at ensuring every community gets to this particular level, every Guyanese can afford a particular set of things, and that plan should run no matter which government is in place. And if we as Guyanese can agree on some basic development goals for our people and have them in place, okay, well, the PPP is out next time. Whichever party with the coalition comes in, all right, we are not going to abandon these development goals that we have in place because it is geared at ensuring that every Guyanese gets to that place where they live in the Guyanese dream. I believe if that is our thinking as Guyanese, then we are on the right road. But unfortunately, we are subjects to the politics of the day, and sometimes good ideas get thrown out with the bath water, with the bath water. But we are here, and I like the conversation. I believe this is where we need to start. We need to express these views, and so we can start putting it in the ear, putting it in the head, put it out there into the ether. Let people start thinking about what it is that we need to do to ensure that Guyanese are living that life that they can see. Yes, we're getting close to that dream. So that's my opening thoughts there. I believe that a lot of things need to be put in place. From the bottom to the top. I mean, at the top, we need a national development plan that we can agree that if governments change, we're not going to change this plan.
And Randy, I'll also like you to talk about
Mhm.
what you do now, but I'll come to that in a minute.
Okay.
To build on what you've said, I have I have not made this confession publicly
Mhm.
um before, but I'm going to say it now. My Over the past 6 years, my humanity was challenged.
Mhm.
I, I don't know if that makes sense to you,
Mhm. Mhm.
but my humanity was challenged because I grapple um with the change of one government to the next and the exclusion of
Mhm.
a large group of human beings, because
Mhm.
when a government change, you don't stop being human.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that there's a silent um there's a silent emotional um psychological, what should I say, grappling, for the want of a better word, that I think many Guyanese are experiencing. And so, what I also grapple with is people justify that change by saying, oh, it's the same thing to do for 28 years, but, or the same thing Fobbs Burnham used to do for 28 years. Now, I don't know, I know you were not alive during the 1960s. Neither was I. So I struggle with paying the consequences, or
Yes.
having to suffer the consequences, or seeing
Mhm.
people having to suffer the consequences for what, for example, Fobbs Burnham might have done in the 60s
Yes.
and in the 70s. One, I was not born in the 60s, and two, I was just a child in the 70s. And so we have, and for the younger people like yourself and other people who are or even who are even younger, I grapple with their humanity
Mhm.
under the perception that it is okay when one government change to exclude a
Ex-
large group, because it might have happened, because Fobbs Burnham might have done it, and people would say things like people refer to, and when you comment or you share your views, it's almost like, as a human being, you should not do that. because you're supposed to accept that you're paying for what Forbes Barnum did in the 1960s or what the PNC
Mm,
did.
mm,
And I guess but because in our adult life, we have only known the PPP. We're not going to get this program is not too political, but I think we need to set a psychological and a sociological context. And
yeah.
so
Yes.
and I will even say anthropological context also.
Mm,
So we are grappling with having to accept when one government change, it's almost like your humanity is reduced and
yeah.
you're forced to accept that. I don't know if you experience that, um and if you some of the people who you interact with, if they experience it too. And this
Definitely.
points to what you're saying about that national development plan. But you go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, and I understand exactly what that means, and I believe that that has stymied our development as a nation a, a whole lot. That sidelining of half of the population, I mean, which is a consequence of our uh, ethno-political mix that we have. We have our mixed our politics with race and ethnicity, and our demographic is one in which we have a large block here and a large block here, and politics has been mixed up with that, and so you have this uh, sidelining, as you said, right? Putting to a corner of a large swath of the population, as if, you know what, y'all had y'all time to move forward. Now is our time and our people's time, and that has stymied our development as a nation, because the reality is, it doesn't matter which side of the political divide, or um, how straight or kinky your hair is, you have a role to play in our country's development, and your ideas and your work and your effort, all redound to the moving forward of our country. And so a lot of times, like I would have said, the baby's thrown out with the bathwater, and we have this sidelining and as you said, the meaning and the dehumanizing of a certain set of people when government changes. And that, for me, has been one of the biggest um, roadblocks, hurdles to our development. I believe that our country would have been far, 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 way better off if if we weren't of that mindset, and we saw Guyanese as Guyanese, and that development work continues despite who you look like or who you support, right? And so it is a mindset shift that needs to happen for persons to start seeing and thinking like that, because it is easy, and let me say this, it is very, very easy and understandable. It's an understandable part of human nature to be tribal. And I want to say this because, and I look at what is going on in South Africa at the moment, right? With the anti-immigration marches that they're having, and the treatment of non-nationals, and you see the support that that is getting, and you ask yourself, why would a people treat other human beings in that manner? Simply because they were born beyond an invisible line, right? You understand, landmass, but you were born just beyond this invisible line, and you treat me as if I'm the scum of the earth. Now, you say that, but then we take into our own consideration what's happening here in Guyana, with whether it be the Cubans, whether it be the Venezuelans, and they're coming into your country, and you understand in some way how people could feel this sense of tribalism and sectarianism, because you get a sense of this stranger is coming to invade your space. And it takes a different mindset to accept and understand and figure out a more nuanced way to deal with it. It is our very tribal and innate nature to defend what we believe is ours. And so when we take that, for me, and put it in the context of our politics in Guyana and how race has been connected to it, you sort of get this idea of why people behave like this. Because, okay, it is our people. I want my people to be looking after the resources, somebody that looks like me to be looking after the resources of my country. And then the other sets are, no, why don't somebody that look like me, because I believe they will look after my interests, let them lead. And so we are essentially for 60 years being reaping the consequences of that pairing of race and politics. And I believe it will take a different generation. It will take a different mindset, a different way of thinking, a thinking that has development at the forefront and not race, to
And
move us in a different direction.
I absolutely agree with you. You know, there's a saying that if you would like to mobilize the natives, get an outsider.
Yes.
And when you mentioned this South Africa con, example, but
Mm-hmm.
coming back here to us in Guyana, I like what
Mm-hmm.
you said, that it has to change, because, and I think the more I am from a development background and
Mm-hmm.
human rights background, a
Mm-hmm.
humanitarian background, and in development, in humanitarian work, and as it come when we're dealing with rights, we don't necessarily put a face to the rights, so to speak,
Right.
because, and that's why they're called equal rights. All human beings were born equal. But in the practical context in Guyana, politics can determine whether you eat and what you eat for 23 years, for 28 years, for 30 years. And so I think um, it is a responsibility on my generation and your generation and the generation, a generation after your generation, to to advocate for Guyana, where um, the focus is more on our humanity. The focus is on development, like you said. So we're, I find it admirable. I mean, the United States is not without its challenges, but I find it admirable that people can openly say that I am a Democrat, I am a Republican, I am an independent, and with no, in the generally speaking, with no consequences, because there's a recognition and an acceptance in the society that to participate in the democratic process, it's not just to have it in the Constitution that citizens must participate in the democratic process or to have it in the laws, but there's a practical aspect of it where some people will be Democrats, some citizens, and some citizens will be Republicans. And some citizens will say, I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. I'm an independent. And that doesn't, in the general context, I'm saying it's that is accepted. But in Guyana, if you openly say I am PNC, I am APNU, I am Forward Guyana Movement, or I'm PPP, right? That comes with serious consequences. And
Yeah.
so and so Randy, how can we as a country
Mm.
begin to, because all things are created twice. First, there has to be that mental creation, that mental reorientation, that mental reconceptualization of Guyana. And then it's happen in the physical in terms of it is put into laws, it is put into policies, it is implemented in policies, rather it is put into regulations, and even in behavior, societal behavior, institutional behavior, community behavior. We're going to come to community in a minute. But how can we have a Guyana where politics does not determine whether you eat or not, whether you are able to work or not, whether you're able to buy milk for your babies or not, but where it is determined by a broader set of rules and norms and behavior?
That is a good question. I think there's as a long roadmap as far as I'm concerned. It starts, of course, with you, um, the different mindset and the different thinking. And you are so correct that politics determines whether or not you can survive in this country. And this is something that deters, scares. It keeps young people from getting into politics. There are so many young, vibrant, excellent intellectuals who are going to say to you in no uncertain terms that I'm not going to get into politics because you know what? My family has to eat. I have to eat. You know, I don't want to jeopardize my future. I've studied, I have a master's in economics. This is somebody who could contribute to the development of this country. Rather stay quiet and stay in the corner, go work in a private institution or go overseas, work somewhere, earn some money and live a good life. And we miss out on those people, those young people, because of the nature of our politics. And this is why I say what is being happening in our country in terms of our politics has been so injurious to our development. And so you are so correct. I Let me give you some personal example. When I ventured into politics around 2010, my family, they were like, "What are you doing?" Because you understand the victimization, you understand the level of contempt that is thrown your way from the other side, and the sense, the pettiness that we have in our politics. I have since seen that, and I'll tell you, we're hard pressed to find young people who want to be participant in the political process. Hard pressed to find them. And a lot of times you come across in your campaign, you find very smart, intelligent, great young people. And I find myself giving them the same warning that I got. To the extent, for example, if they have a small business and they have a young family and they have a small business coming up, I would actually tell them, listen, is this something that you want to do? And that is how sad it is we are in our country at this point in time. Is this something that you want to do? Are you sure? Because the politicians that we have in the politics of the day will see that small business that you have suffer. And so again, how do we get to a place where you can freely come out and say, look, I'm supporting this political party, and I know that at the end of the day, my business will not be targeted, my family will not be targeted, I will not be blacklisted. I don't know how we get there without um, cleaning house. It has to be a new set of people with a different set of thinking. You we can't get there with the people who have dug in their heels in this political mindset of victimization and pettiness. It has to be a new bunch of people who are saying, look, we are not going to engage in that politics. We are going to engage in the politics of development. So I don't care what you look like, where you come from, who you support. As long as you have an idea that can build this country and move us forward, we are engaging you. And so it has to start with the newer generation. It's sad to say, it's really sad to say, but you understand what I mean. You have been saying it. You can be sidelined for 20 something years. A number of persons have been sidelined for the last six for the last 6 years.
And you know what is interesting is
Mm,
that I don't think that people realize the psychological impact
yes, I'm coming to
this
that.
is
Yes,
having on,
yes.
and you and I guess can relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I remember, and I'll share this with you. I remember during the 2016 to 2020,
Mm-hmm.
I was working at Gaisuko.
Mm-hmm.
And some people used to say, and I used to criticize the Granger government, even though because I was thinking that for 23 years, we fought for change. This is not the
Mm-hmm.
change that we fought for. We fought
Mm-hmm.
for a more equitable society. We fought for more, some people might say that, oh, you were politically naive. So some people
Mm-hmm.
used to say to me, you got this little job, why you don't do it and keep your mouth shut, right? But my Christianity, my religion, my faith, also I've worked in development prior to going to Gaisuko in 2016. I had worked
Mm-hmm.
in development for almost 20 years, for more than 15 years. And so I'm a rights-based person. And so irrespective of whether a government that I might have supported was in government, wrong is wrong, right is right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so irrespective of working with Gaisuko, I still advocated for what was right. And I think that people used to say, you got this little job, keep this job and keep your mouth shut, right? But I couldn't do that. And I look back and I think that it's maybe they understood some things politically that I did not understand. Because irrespective of advocating for the constituency of the other side of the PPP, I still got fired in 2020, right? So the PPP did not think that, oh, she was at Gaisuko fighting, advocating for our constituency. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
think so. They fired me as soon as they came in, or shortly after, in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So one is caught in a situation where you're thinking, I remember having this discussion about whether you turn your face when you see wrong things are being done to others. And we were saying no. But you also have to bear in mind that actions have consequences.
Yes.
So you have to be prepared that if I stand up, I have to be prepared to suffer the consequences of my actions. And I remember an elderly person I was talking to, and he's in his 90s, and I was having this discussion with him, and he said to me that um, you have to, he said, stick with the principles. He said, you can't go wrong with the principles. You may get fired for sticking to the principles, but at least you can defend the principles. But it brings me to this point here, in that there's a practical and a real side of that. In that sometimes you ask yourself, should I keep my mouth shut so that I can keep my job? And should I watch people's rights being violated? Should I watch people being abused and in some cases brutalized, and say nothing so that I can keep my job and I can maintain the comforts of life?
A lot of people
And
choose that. A lot of people choose that. A lot of people, it's easy to choose that. It is harder to say I'm going to stand up for what's right, even if it costs me, even if it costs my family. And a lot of people are not willing to make that decision. And so those who seek to oppress and those who seek to rule in that manner, they understand that the psychology of that and the idea that people are not willing to give up their daily bread for to stand for what's right. And so that strategy is a very effective one, as we would have seen for many years in Guyana. And somebody asked one time, why is it that the government seems to be so petty? And I said to them, I said, you need to understand the psychology of how that type of leadership works. In that, if you rule out of fear, if you rule from a place where you with an iron fist, you have to maintain that. It means that I cannot allow even the smallest thing to pass, because then that person gets an idea. Oh well, if I get away with this, if I'm able to speak out on Facebook and nothing's happened with me, I still getting government contracts, I still have my job, then somebody else will look at that and say, well, I could speak out as well. And then I could speak out as well. And I can stand up for rights. I can stand up for rights. And you have a runaway thing where everybody feels like they can stand up for the rights. And so this psychology of fear is dependent on being very petty. And so the pettiness is part of it. And so we see it. And so you understand what it is. And I say to you, it is hard. It is hard to go and tell a man, listen, hey, we need to stand up for what's right. You see what these people are doing is wrong. Y'all need to come out and stand up. When that person hand, as we say in local thing, hand in tiger mouth. But you understand that, and this is why. I remember. I know. I that recent article that I wrote where it says how the PPP taught a generation how not to care, right? And this is how you teach people not to care. And we will we'll get down to the community level. But how you teach people not to care is showing them the consequence of caring.
Yes. Oh, I like the way you put it. You show them the consequence of
Consequence.
caring.
Right.
And oh, I have to repeat that. You show them that caring
Comes
has consequences, right?
right.
And
Mm,
but we're going to get to those consequences and how we can encourage young people to become more involved
mm,
in community development. And I'll tell
mm,
you, so Randy, the as it relates to what do we do? Do we as a human being, because
mhm,
I do believe that there's a level at which we connect as human beings, irrespective of whether you're black, you're Caucasian, you're Chinese, you're Portuguese. We are human beings first. And there's a level, and this is where you will find a Caucasian firefighter bursting into a building to save a black child. And
mm,
that is because one, it's the professional training, but two, above that professional training, there our humanity. There's that humanness, that
mm,
human level at which we connect. And so the fact that I think, and I would say this, I've been suffering
mm,
from 2020, and I've been watching people suffer. And
mm,
it's something I'm saying this in public and making myself vulnerable.
mm,
But it's a suffering that it's more um I didn't know that it was this bad kind of suffering. It's a realization that I did not know that this was how bad it politics can make a person's life, can make people's lives. And
yeah.
it's I have heard some stories, and some stories about, and sometimes when you think that your situation is bad and you listen to other people tell their stories, you realize that this thing is really really bad. And I'd like to go back to 2015, but somehow to me it was not always like this. I think 2020, things became, what we saw was how our leaders would behave if they have money. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
oil money changed the level of the level of I would say it's abuse.
Hmm.
I see it's coming from a rights-based perspective, it's abuse. And I
Hmm.
think that what we saw from 2020 is how people will treat another group if they have money. Because to
Hmm.
me, prior to 2015, we were still allowed to, and I say prior to 2015, I'm going to come to the period of the President Granger's administration. I think we were
Yeah.
still allowed to criticize. I was working as a consultant, and prior to 2015, I criticized the PPP government, but I didn't stop me from putting food on my table. It
Hmm.
didn't stop me from um, getting any jobs at all. It didn't stop me prior to 2015. I still worked with the government. I worked with the Ministry of Health. I worked with the Ministry of Local Government. This was prior to 2015. I remember I was doing a consultancy and I was even going to employ somebody who was a member of parliament.
Hmm.
And somebody from the then government said that no, there were some grumblings, and I said to them that this person is a qualified professional and I'm going to employ them, so be it. And I was able to employ that person who was an opposition member of parliament. I think the person was an opposition member of parliament at the time, or they were a known opposition person,
Yes.
and there was no consequence. I didn't suffer any consequence. I was able to complete my project. The international organizations didn't ask any questions, and the person was able to do their job professionally. That was prior to 2015. I remember I was in Geneva, and I was at a training session, and we were doing this training session, and this was around 2012, 2011, 2012. And I remember saying that in Guyana, you can tell off a minister today, and tomorrow you see the minister, and the minister will give you their number. And some of my colleagues from another continent said to me that if you do that in our countries, your business will be closed down. And I said to them, not in Guyana. And the facilitator, who was an international facilitator, said that jokingly, he said that he was from an international organization from the United Kingdom. And he said, when I said that, he said that I have to come to Guyana, because I said in Guyana you could criticize the government, criticize the opposition, and then the next day the minister will see you and give you his number. Don't, and my colleague said that in their on their continent the business would have been closed down. So something changed, and so let's come to the David Granger administration also. The David Granger administration, I find that there was a level of freedom, there was a level of there was a recognition of our humanity, right? Say what you want to say about David Granger, but he was just a decent human being. And whatever I criticize President Granger as president, I criticize his style of leadership, etc. I've criticized it in the past, but there was a level of maturity and a level of recognition of our humanity that he brought to the presidency. And there was a level of freedom. I find from 2020, um, Our leaders are showing us that there are consequences to caring, especially now that we have money.
Yeah.
But in all of this, how can we encourage young people to get involved in community development, to get involved in politics? I don't know if you saw the interview with two young persons on Dr. Dexter Todd's program recently. That was heartbreaking to hear those two young men talk about how
Yeah.
difficult
And
it is
I know those two young
for
men,
young
and
people to be involved in politics. Go ahead.
No, I said I know those two young men. I know them very well. I understand the situation and understand why young people are afraid of politics. Um, let me see if I can map this out clearly, because I want to talk about a few things. Now, the fear of politics or fear of being involved in politics is not only from an opposition side, or for example, oh, I'm advocating, I'm a APNU or Win or Fort Ghana politician, and I'm going to be affected by PPP. There's also the lack of protection from your own party, because they might not be in a financial position, or even any position to protect you. So you're advocating out there, and you might be targeted by the government, but there's no protection for you from your political party. All right, so they take away your job. We are so connected in the country that we can have you work for us here, and so your daily bread is not. So there's a lack of that too. At the community level, and I want to answer your question about how can we get young people involved in politics, community development, general advocacy. The problem is that let's frame it as getting young people involved in community work, right? At the community level, somebody who is 18, 19, 20, around that age, how can you inculcate in them a sense of community and nationhood, so that they would say, you know what, I don't like how this street looking. I'm gonna go knock at the neighbors' doors and say, man, you have a shovel, you have a wheelbarrow, you have a truck. Can we come together and fix this drain? Will you find an 18, 19, or 20-year-old willing to get up out of the house and organize at that level, at community level, to fix a drain? How do you, and that sense of community is not, you can hardly find it. And there's a reason for that, as I would have expressed in my article, that we have taken away this idea of local government and local democracy from the people. They grew up not knowing that they can make a difference. And so it's not their problem, not my monkey, not my circus. I'm not getting involved. The other problem that we have is that with community work will always come a sense of advocacy and calling out the wrongs. Because, all right, I will not get up and just say, let's fix our community drain. There will be a recognition as to why this community drain is not fixed. And then it will ultimately point to some government agency. And you, as a young person, it will be seen as if you are criticizing the government, right? And so I believe, and then when you criticize the government, when you're seen as criticizing the government takes offense to that, and then you are targeted as a young person, and this kind of makes you pull back. There is a way around that. As young people, what I believe that we need to encourage young people to do is, yes, get into community work, get into community development work, and leave the advocacy, the pointing out of the injustice and the wrongs to the established politician. What I mean by that, if it is that your community has an issue, as a young person, you can sit down and think about a plan. How is it that we want to fix this community? How is it that we want to clean this drain? What are the steps we will take to ensure that this drain is cleaned, or this road is cleared, or this street light is put up? And you work with your community members to do that. What you don't necessarily get into is calling out the local authorities, or making a big deal of the fact that this thing is not being done by the authorities. What you may want to do as a young person is to direct those complaints to the seasoned politician. Say, man, come, look and highlight this thing in our community. If it's not fixed, then I'm going to organize the community members to go and let us fix it. But leave the front page, the newspaper, the Facebook post, those to the seasoned politician, and slowly work your way into that eventually. But at the community level, I will say to a young person, get up, organize, help, fix. You can do that without being antagonistic and without being a target. And the more you do that, the more you get into a place where the people in the community see you as a leader. And so you start your development career, your development path there. Get up, recognize the problem, think about the solution, organize with your community members, fix it. But leave the Facebook criticizing, so to speak. Because, and I say this not lightly, and I shouldn't have to say this, but we are living in a particular country with a particular problem. And if I say to you as a young person, get up and cuss out the government every day about what's happening, you are going to be targeted. I will say to you as a young person, get up, recognize the problem, think about the solution, organize with your community members, fix it. If you want somebody to cuss out the government and bring attention to your issue, you don't necessarily have to do it. But you can play a role in the fixing of the problem and eventually work your way into a place where you're comfortable enough that you want to be the one doing the criticizing and the front page and the Facebook. And so I will say, tread carefully, but do get involved. It's a strange thing to say, but we have to frame it like that because of where we're living.
It's interesting, and I would take you back to, I hear you, and those are words of wisdom. And this is why we're developing this movement, building our dream Guyana. And how can we help you to build your dream village, to build your dream life, to build your dream community, and to build your dream family. And the part of what we're doing, we'd like to work with communities to develop what we call sustainable development and economic development plans. Another area that we'll be doing, we'll be focusing on this program, Development at Work, as well as building our Dream Guyana movement, is partnership building. There's a science and art to partnership. I studied partnership building as a postgraduate program at the University of Cambridge. And and very often we think that partnerships, alliances, groups, it's just bringing people together. But there's a science and an art in bringing people together to work together. So what you're saying also, it refers to, in a way, that learning that science and that art of what do you bring as a member of your community, as a resident in your community, as a community leader. Yes. And what do you want from the government? And then it helps. So I'm hoping that we can also do programs on the science and art of partnering and building partnerships at the community level. But I also want to say that that's a bit challenging because we live in a day and age of social media. And so it's difficult sometimes. When I was growing up, we didn't even have a telephone at home. We didn't have a television. So our community development was limited to the knowledge from the community and maybe what we read in the newspapers, you heard on the radio. And but now young people have all of this information coming at them from Facebook, from YouTube, from all of these different platforms on social media, from the and it's minute by minute, second by second. And so and then I think we have more contradictions now in the open than we had when I was growing up. So it's asking young people then to be able to exercise a level of maturity despite these contradictions, right? So, but then I do hear what you're saying, because ultimately is what do you want to achieve and what is the best approach to help you to achieve what you want to achieve. What you'd like to achieve is the development of your community, not necessarily changing government. So then focus on the development of your community. That's what you're saying. And the part
You
of it
have to
also,
look.
yes, go ahead.
So, sorry, no, I said you have to look at it like that. You have to look at it like that. There's always the bigger picture. If you believe that the government that is managing the national resources of the country, eventually you will advocate for them. At that time will come when you advocate for them to move. But at the community level, I think that's where it starts. You have to be willing to get up and say, you know, what's the problem in this street that I can fix? Or I can help fix? How can I organize to fix it in this street? And that sense of community is not there. And you know, I'm so happy that you have this program and the Dream Guyana movement, so we can start encouraging more persons to start doing what they can do in their community to build their Dream Guyana.
So what you're saying is to sort of filter out the politics. And as difficult as it is to filter out the politics. And
Yeah.
you know, after the 2025 elections, I did some thinking, and I realized that we have to filter out our lives. And
Mm-hmm.
there is politics and there is life and living. There
Mm-hmm.
was a time when politics made life and living easy.
Easy.
But
Yeah.
now politics would make life and living extremely difficult, even
Right.
impossible.
Yeah.
So what I have done is separated politics from life and living.
Mm-hmm.
Building our Dream Guyana movement is now focusing on um, economic and social stability, and particularly helping families, helping communities to develop um, economic independence and
Yes.
social and economic stability. And so, what I say to the groups who I work with and the families, that come 2030, it doesn't matter who gets into government. You, your family, and your community must have social and economic stability. You must
Mm-hmm.
have economic stability and independence. So you don't have to depend on your party getting into government so that you can get a job, because that can take 23 years. That
Mm-hmm.
can take 28 years. That can take 30 years. So what is it that we have in our power to do?
Yeah.
And how can we work with people to use what it is? What are we in control of? We're not in control of the government. We can't
Mm.
determine whether the government allow us to get a job or to get economic and financial stability or not. And so we might be out there complaining until the cows come home. And if the government decides that they're not going to do it, they're not going to do it. So then what do we do? Do we wait until 2030 and hope that your party gets into government to help you to get a job, to help you to have economic and financial stability and independence? And so in a way, what we're saying, it's taking our communities back. taking our families back economically, socially, and culturally.
Hmm.
That's what we're
Definitely.
saying, Randy.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying. You have to take control. I mean, we know the situation we're in, but you have to ask yourself, what can I do at my community level to, as you said, take back those things. You work with the things that are in your control to make your community better. I believe that that is exactly what is needed. Um, and I know we're running out of time, but I want to also talk about big picture. The community level is one thing, and you're working the work that you're doing, and all the other persons who are interested in development are going to be working at the community level to ensure that families, individuals all work to take back those things that you said. But I believe that our country requires, sometimes to fix things that seem very hard, you need to think extreme. I know that after the Rwandan genocide, there were constitutional amendments made in Rwanda to outlaw essentially racism and discrimination because they had a big problem, and that problem demanded something extreme to fix it. And so they said, here what? If you discriminate, and if you're racist, or you do anything like that, that would hint at you know, pushing your brother out or being discriminatory or to your fellow Rwandan, despite whatever tribe you believe they come from or whatever sect, you will be imprisoned. And so they moved to that level where they amended the constitution to get rid of that because they saw that as a source of their problem. And I believe in Guyana, we, as I said, like if I can go back to this idea of a national development plan, we have to sit down at the table as a country and say these are the things that we want Guyanese to have in between now and the next 10 years. We want Guyanese to be able to afford X, Y, Z. We want them to be able to live here. We want them to have these conditions. And this development plan, national development plan, has to be put in place and will stay in place whichever government comes. Yes, at the community level, we have to do what we have to do, but that has to be matched with a broader development plan. And so I believe that we have to advocate for both things. Both things.
And I'd also like to quickly say that you see, as someone who I work in development, so part of that has to do with behavioral change, institutional behavioral change, organizational behavioral change, societal behavioral change, and to a lesser extent, individual behavioral change. But and so you see in Rwanda, for profound change to happen, there needs to be something has to trigger that change. And so the
Unfortunately,
genocide
yes, yeah,
in Rwanda, where I think it was 800,000 people died in over 100 days, I think. And so they that was a trigger for Rwanda to say that we need to make some profound changes so that this will never happen
happen
again.
again. Mm-hmm.
I think in the Guyana context, I grew up hearing people say, we don't want to go back to the 60s. The
Mm-hmm.
60s was bad. You remember hearing that? Can you
Yes,
recall
yes,
hearing that?
yes.
The 60s was bad. But I never experienced the 60s. And so I grew up hearing that was hammered almost in our heads. So we would always come Ghana. There are many times when Ghana will come to the brink, and you would think that we will go over the edge. This country will go over the edge, right? And then something would pull us back and prevent us from going over the edge. And I think um, it was that memory of the what happened in the 1960s.
Yeah.
But I think 3 generations down the line, three generations, let's say from the 1960s, if we said generation is 20 years. So let's say 3 generations down the line, right? Or a little more than that. The younger generation, people who are in their 40s, in their 50s, in their 30s, they don't know about that 1960s, what happened in Guyana in the 1960s. And so sometimes we get the impression that maybe after the 1960s, maybe we needed to make those institutional changes, policy changes, like what Rwanda did. And so sometimes you think that um, maybe we're going to have some trigger that is going to then trigger this generation. So then put those kinds of institutional and policy, make those institutional and policy changes. But for profound change to happen, very often
We need a trigger.
we need a trigger. And
uh,
it's a sad reality, right? It's a
yes.
sad reality. But where I think oil in many ways is a trigger, but it's too soon for us to determine what oil is going to trigger. I believe that oil is triggering some things. And I believe that there's a lot that is happening under the surface that oil is triggering. And I don't think that we're able to sum up as yet what oil is triggering in our societies. But definitely we know that it's triggering something. Do you get that sense?
Yeah, I want to argue that the thing that oil will trigger will we've already seen some of it. It's drip. It's a slow drip. I look back at Trinidad and Tobago and their oil boom, 80s, 90s, and what eventually happened, which was the widening of the wealth gap and this distance between the haves and the have-nots, and what that cascading crime wave that happened, and they're still dealing with the crime in the country, right? With one of the highest crime rates, in the Caribbean, and that for me was created by the runaway wealth gap, the oil, and the failure to manage um, the lifting of all boats. And I think in a lot of ways, this administration is falling into the same trap. Um, the average Guyanese is not feeling the effects of it. And when you create a situation where half of the population, or more than half of the population, does not feel the effects of the oil that they're seeing other people benefiting from, you create a situation where they have not decided, oh, I will take what you have. And so I'm afraid that we will see an uptick in crime in the coming years because we are not managing that wealth gap properly. We are not managing to bring more people out of poverty and into the middle class. That is not happening, and I don't think that the macroeconomic plan allows that to happen. And so I'm afraid that the trigger has already been. It might be a slower trigger, but I see this happening, and I see us going down that same path that Trinidad and Tobago went down. And maybe at some point in time, Guyanese might say, "Listen, we are fed up. We can't deal with this anymore. The crime is out of hand. We are the bottom bracket and not getting anything." And sad to say, because we have what, we now have 1 million people. This is not a lot of people. It's not a lot of people to bring out of that poverty. It's not. If we are to take the data as it is, 2024 data, 52% of Guyanese living in poverty, about 32% living in abject poverty, and you take our population as it is, you're looking at 500,000 people, around 500,000 people that you as a government that making all this money, billions of dollars, millions of US a day, to bring the figure out how to bring those people out of poverty shouldn't be that difficult. And so that is my take on that. I believe that we are already drifting into that place where people at some point in time will say enough is enough because we are not benefiting. And you rightly said that oil is going to bring on that trigger. I believe that.
And you know, Randy, in wrapping up, I'd like to say
Mm-hmm.
that this is where I am hoping
Mm-hmm.
that Building Our Dream Guyana movement, programs like this, development at work, and building our dream communities, building our dream families, building our dream lives. And then we have
Mm-hmm.
some other programs within those programs, such as Every Citizen a Resource. For example, we're encouraging families, communities to ensure that every resident in your community, every family member has about 3 skills or develop 3 skills from which they can
Yes.
earn. And then
Yes.
we have excuse me, and then we have the building an environmental industry, which focuses on job creation, environmentally developing an environmentally friendly community. And then we also have building a family industry, looking at the
Mm.
family as an industry. And we have a
Yes.
number of other programs that we will be doing, and with communities, with families. Those are our target groups. And what I'm hoping is that these programs can serve a mitigating purpose, where we can help people to reimagine their lives, to reconceptualize their communities, and um, and assist them with knowledge and know-how, and as to how they can create their own dream villages, their dream communities, their dream families. And so, because I've recognized that if we do not have mitigating factors, that um, oil can trigger us in a way that we to go in a direction that we prefer not to go in. And
Yes. Yes.
so, and so I'm also hoping that even as we discuss, Randy, we definitely I'm going to bring you back on this program for us to talk
No
more
problem. No
about
problem.
involving young people um, in community development. I like the advice that you share in terms of filtering out politics and focus on the community development. I also I'll also like to say that that we one of the areas we have to focus on is economic and financial independence. Heavily
Yes.
on, you can't do anything without money. And there are
Mm-hmm.
a number of programs that we are promoting. For example, promoting developing a family development fund. I'm working with some communities and some families. They're developing a microfinance scheme, and some of them are also developing a family pension program. So I'm going to be sharing all of these ideas on this program, and we hope that you can invite us to your communities so that we can help you to develop community sustainable development and economic development plans, so that we can help you, churches, faith, faith-based organizations. We are encouraging you to every church, every mosque, every temple should have an economic development plan for your members that includes education and training, capacity building. So, Randy, we're going to be, I hope to have you back to discuss all of these
Definitely.
things. My
Sure.
my last point is that again, China and India were able to bring 600 million people. India has, I think, 1.5 billion people.
Brilliant.
China, I
Yeah.
think, has about 1.3 billion. And both China and India were able to bring 600 million people in each country out of poverty. I think it was over a period of 2 generations. Think about it. 100 million people India was able to bring out of abject poverty for over a period of 40 years. The
Yeah.
same with China. Rwanda, we mentioned Rwanda earlier. Rwanda, 800,000 people. That's more than the population of Guyana. Well, now you said we were at a million, right?
Mhm.
But we were at 750,000 for
Many
decades.
years. Yeah.
So Rwanda, after the genocide in 1994, I think it was, Rwanda became the Rwanda economy was growing. I think it was at about 7%. I can't quite recall. This is prior to the pandemic.
Mhm.
Continuously, it was the fastest, I think, growing African economy. So
Yeah.
Rwanda was able to rebound after that genocide. So when people say that after what happened in the 1960s, it's difficult for us to rebound, we have an example in Rwanda. When
Yeah.
people say that it's difficult to bring people out of poverty, I just mentioned China bringing 600 million people out of poverty in 40 years. India
Mhm.
bringing 600 million people out of poverty over a period of 40 years. And so you mentioned that in our case, it's about 500,000 people.
Small
So
number. Small number.
it's a small
And,
number.
I, and I'm happy that you mentioned China because that's a great example of how a government, if they are pragmatic in their approach and they're thinking development and not petty partisan politics. Well, China is a different political environment altogether. But so I'm just saying, but the same model. I know in certain parts of China, let's just call it the regional counselor or the counselor on the NDC. Let's just put it like that, our equivalent of the NDC counselor. They have a list of members in this community or families in this community that living below the poverty line. And when you go to that particular house, there is a note on the door of that house. It names the counselor and the things that this family is expected to have by X date. So it's very, very specific. And they say, if I have 500 families in this community that living below the poverty line, as the counselor, my job is to ensure that I work at the community level with them to get them out of poverty. My responsibility is to get these 500 families out of poverty by ensuring that they have access to government services and whether they need a scholarship, whether they need to enroll into a class, whether they need to start a business. That is your job. And your movement up the political ladder from councillor, the NDC to the RDC, for example, is dependent on whether or not you are successful at getting those 500 families out of poverty. And so that sort of pragmatic, down to earth, community level, granular approach to moving people from one place to the next is needed. And it must be attached. It must be attached to your movement. It's a meritocracy. If you are able to move these families out of poverty, now you're able to serve at a higher level. And we can take a lot of things from those countries, a lot.
And I'll share this with you, and then we're going to wrap up. We're
Mhm.
I am working on based on the work I've been doing in communities. I'm working on something that I call uh, um, a sustainable development and prosperity index for villages. And this is an index that we're going to be doing surveys with villages, and we will go through these various indicators, or we have a list of things that families in communities and residents in communities. The program it is targeting villages, but it could be applied in other communities. And so to determine over a period, um, how are you moving from poverty into prosperity? Because when we talk about prosperity, how do we measure prosperity? So what I'm working on is developing an index to be used at the village level to measure prosperity, and it's called the Sustainable Development and Prosperity Index. And so it's going to be, I'm sort of now working on it, developing it, and then I hope to share it with a wider group so that they can review and give some input. So Randy,
Yeah.
it was any final thoughts
No,
before
I'm
we
thinking persons who may be listening may want to know how they can help and be a part of the things that you're doing. You may want to leave some information with them. you
yes.
know.
In all right. So remember I said that trying to think now where I can put this information. Um
Okay.
so I am where can I put this information? But you can get me on my email address is Tomo Thomo gy@yahoo.com. My telephone number, my WhatsApp, this is also my WhatsApp number. It's 592-694-5585. So Randy, because I am limited in terms of the technical aspect, I can't
Yeah.
find where to write it.
Let
Right?
me promise
So
you that next time we
next
on,
yes, next
I'll
Tuesday.
right. I'll
Right?
definitely
Let's
come in on the admin side to help you put up
yes.
information and stuff.
So let's continue this conversation. Once you're available next Tuesday, let's continue this conversation. And because ultimately we need to be able to pass on this, Diana, to our young leaders. And we need to find ways to get them involved. And starting at the community level, it's a good way. That's a good place to start. So
Definitely.
once again, Randy, the last thing you didn't say was what you do now. We should have done that first thing, but quickly tell us, what do you do now?
I outside of working with the Ford Guyana movement, I do radio. I'm in on the radio in the mornings from 7 to 10 on 975, 97.5 FM. And well, party work, radio, and I do consultancy, creative and cultural consultancy. Right. Supposed to be working with, I have a consultancy coming up where I'll be teaching spoken word poetry in the male and female prisons. And so, yeah, so that is my like thing I do. I really engage in um, spreading of culture and ensuring that our culture is at the forefront of what we do. And so that is my well, I was a teacher. I've left the classroom, but now I'm dealing with creative and cultural consultancy.
Years ago, there was a show, Prisoners in Concert.
Yeah, they
And
still
I don't
have
know
it.
if you
They
know,
still have it. That this
I don't
this
know.
program that we're doing is to lead up to that.
Okay, all right. I remember that program, and there's a lot of talent
Yes.
in
Yeah.
the prisons and etc.
Yeah.
Randy, definitely will be I'll be more than happy to have you back again. And I'm hoping that also when we start to be working with communities, I'm hoping we can have about 50 communities that we'll be working with, and then
Yes.
be able to share your skills and your expertise as we work with those communities. Once
Definitely.
again, thank you for joining the
Thank you for
program.
having me.
It's a pleasure.
All right.
Well, and that was Randy Cucciolo. That was my first guest on the building our development at work with Audreyanna Thomas, and it's we're focusing on how we can build more economic and social stability into families, into communities. And like we said in the program, we're trying to also filter out the politics and focus on life and living. Um, under our Building Our Dream Guyana movement. So do have thank you for joining, and provide us with feedback and let us know how you find our programs. And I'll see you again on Thursday.